And hello, fabulous AP students. This is Mr. Jacobson. I am excited to be with you today. Today, we're going to talk about the developments in Dar al Islam. Dar al Islam basically means um, everywhere that's Islamic in the world, either under a caliphate or on a separate kingdom or so forth. Everywhere that Islam is governed another area. So let's begin. Okay, so to understand Islam, first we have to understand how did it emerge on the world stage? Like what was going on that allowed it to emerge? Because Islam, you see way down here where Mecca is at the very bottom, that's where Islam is going to merge. That's where Muhammad will grow up. And something really understand about this is that Alexander the Great never wanted to conquer the Arabian Peninsula. Neither did the Romans. In fact, no significant ruler ever tried to conquer the Arabian Peninsula because it was a desert, and it would be hard because you got to take your men in there, and you need to have a water source, and in deserts it's rare. There's limited resources, and there was really no incentive. People just didn't really feel like that was worth the effort. And so for the most part, that area, the Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula, just sort of gets left alone, and Bedouin or indigenous people sort of live there. So around 630, okay, when all this starts happening, we have the Byzantine Empire in the green, and we have the Sassanid or the Sasanian Empire, the Persian Empire, in the orangish brownish color. So these two were touching each other, they're bordering each other, and that is a big no-no if you don't have an alliance. And so, because they bordered each other, they actually started fighting each other a lot. And they would waste valuable resources over and over again, trying to outdo the other. And for 200 years, they would just duke it out between each other, exhausting their manpower, their resources, and everything else. To the point where when Islam does rise up here and they unify the Arabian Peninsula, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. First, they're eventually going to take over all of the Sasanian Empire and then take large chunks of the Byzantine Empire away as well, including Jerusalem. So nobody really saw this coming. No one thought anything powerful could really come out of the Arabian Peninsula. And so that's one of the reasons why Islam comes out on top, because it was highly underestimated based on the area which it emerged. So within about 100 years, we have Islam is going to spread all the way from India, West India over here, all the way to Cordoba, Spain. They're going to conquer all of North Africa. Then they're going to cross the Mediterranean and conquer Spain that way. And so it's going to expand really fast, and the majority of this expansion will be through conquering and military warfare. Okay, and this is what we will call Dar al Islam. And then the first caliphate to come about will be the Umayyad Caliphate, and their capital will be in Damascus, which is in Syria right here. And then eventually the Umayyad is going to be overthrown by the Abbasid Empire, which is going to be a Persian empire. Still all very Islam. So as you can see here in the map, they don't have all of North Africa like the Umayyads did, and they don't control Spain. Spain is Umayyad of Spain. It's still Muslim. However, it's got its own governance. So the Abbasid Empire doesn't really have any say over here. But as you can see, it's still very big, still very powerful. This is going to usher in the golden age of Islam. The Umayyad, they focused on conquering and expansion. The Abbasid Empire is going to focus more on the arts and literature and improving daily life. And so we have this golden age that emerges where science, culture, technology just flourish at an unprecedented rate. And then we'll also have something very important called the House of Wisdom that will be located in Baghdad. And this will be like a major university, if you will, institution. And you'll have Muslims and Jews and Christians and even Zoroastrianists, which we really didn't learn about. But anyway, they'll all participate at this university and kind of help increase each other's religion and understanding philosophically of who God is. And so the Abbasid Empire is going to slowly start declining. The first thing that happens is the Mamluks, which were a bunch of slaves slash government officials in Egypt. They're going to seize control of Egypt and northern Africa, and they're going to break away from the Abbasid Empire. So the Abbasid Empire is still around. They just lost a pretty big chunk of Egypt and northern Africa, and then the Mamluks will initiate the Mamluk Sultanate, and then the Seljuk Turks, which are north of the Abbasid Empire, they're going to come in and they're going to conquer Baghdad, and they're going to begin the Seljuk Empire. So we have the basically everybody wants a piece of the Abbasid Empire. Where they're located is right smack dab in the middle of Asia, practically, and so there's high interaction from other civilizations going through there. So the Seljuk Turk, they're going to attack. They're going to win. They're going to be around and kind of control the Abbasid Empire, and for well, as you can see, from 1037 to 1194. But they're going to kind of go away in obscurity, and then after that, the Abbasid Empire is going to continue, although they're going to be significantly less powerful. Baghdad as a capital is going to be hurt. The Silk Road paths that used to go through Baghdad are now going to go more north, far north of Baghdad, so they're not going to get a lot of that. And then there's salinization and soil erosion and lack of water that's also starting to come around Baghdad. So the Mongolians put an end to the Abbasid Empire in 1258 by conquering Baghdad. And the Mongolians, I mean, here's a picture, guys. So here are the Mongolians, right? And do you see these people here with their feet flailing in the air? Yeah, so the Baghdad people, they got conquered once, and then they kind of fought against the Mongolians the first time, and after that, the Mongolians came back and just leveled Baghdad to the ground, and then took people and buried them face down in the dirt while they were still alive to prove a point. Don't screw with us. So the Mongolians, they mean business. So we have cultural innovations happening during all this time as well. We have Nasir din al-Tusi, and he is a Persian, and he's a famous Persian for his contributions in astronomy, law, magic, ethics, philosophy, medicine. He laid the groundwork for what we now know as trigonometry to a degree. And then Aisha al-Ba'unya, and she was a female writer. She was best known for her poem about Muhammad. Um, it's called Clear Inspiration on the Praise of the Trusted One. She was more along the Sufi line, and remember, the Sufis are people who want to have that more personal relationship with Allah. They want to get away more from the text and the rituals and kind of commune with their God one-on-one. And we're going to have Sufi missionaries who will start playing a part in the Abbasid Empire, where they're going to spread Islam. One, because they're more tolerant and willing to adapt Islam to local customs. So remember, the Sufis, they want to share Islam, and people say, well, I still want to worship, this God. Well, as long as God, Allah is the top God, then whatever. So they were a little more lenient, trying to adapt people's cultures. They were trying to relate more to them than and not be so rigid in what Islam had to be. And then we have social classes that emerge. Now remember, the merchant class in China is highly dishonored, and that's because of Confucianism. And Confucius believed that merchants didn't produce anything, so they were at the bottom of the caste system. Well, merchants are really honored here in Islam, mainly because Muhammad was a merchant, and not only that, but his wife, who he married, was also a respectable businesswoman as well in Mecca. And so the merchant class is a highly respectable class as long as you are honest, and then you give to charity. And remember, one of the seven pillars of Islam is zakat, or charity, where you need to give 2.5% of your income to charity. And also, classes that emerge, we have slavery that's happening. This was allowed in Islam so long as you could not enslave another Muslim. So a powerful Muslim man could not enslave another person who's professed to be a Muslim. However, if you weren't a Muslim, or even people of the book, so if you're like a Christian or Zoroastrianist or a Jew, you weren't also supposed to be able to enslave them as well, according to Muhammad. Um, excuse me. However, slaves from like East Africa, the the Muslims would have these slave routes on East Africa where they would pull people from East Africa, bring them up into the empire, and they would become slaves. And also in Kievan Rus area, it's like Russia, Ukraine, Belarus area right in there today. And they would also have um, slaves come from there into the Muslim empire. So slavery was allowed as long as you were not a Muslim. And even slave women were had a little more freedom than regular women. They could actually go to the shops in town or whatever. Can go in public. They could even dance for men that they're not acquainted with. Earn money to buy their freedom in some case. So I mean, so women, slave women, could in some cases buy the freedom, have more freedoms than Islamic women who weren't slaves. So women in Islam. So here's Muhammad's policies. They wear a hijab, or a head covering, which was not just Muhammad's thing, but it was a popular custom throughout all of the Middle East at that time. He's told them to treat wives with love and devotion. Dowries, which are money that you have to pay, the groom to be would pay to the um, to the bride to be, or the father. So dowries were to be paid to the future wife and not the father. So he wanted to make sure that that money went to the future wife instead of the father taking it all for himself. And then he forbade female infanticide. Status of women. So women could inherit property and retain ownership after marriage. They could remarry if widowed, receive a cash settlement if divorced, and women's testimony in court was protected from retaliation. However, their testimony was worth half of a man's testimony. Another development that we have is that because Northern Africa and East Africa and other places are becoming more influenced by Islam, you're going to see Islam spreading and growing throughout Africa. And so you're going to see it across West Africa, the Sahara Desert, East Africa. Ethiopia, however, which is in the far northeast of Africa, that's actually going to remain Christian despite all the other conversions of Islam around it. And then another thing that comes about is we have a language that emerges. So we have the blending of Arabic and the Bantu. The Bantu language is kind of like the original mother language of the sub-Saharan Africans. And so they kind of merge those two languages and they come up with the one Swahili. And Swahili, as you can see, this is it right here. You can kind of see a very Arabic kind of looking script to it. And then we have Al-Andalus, which is Spain. So the Muslims conquered the whole Iberian Peninsula. So do you see right here, all of this area? The Muslims conquered all that, okay? And they did that from North Africa. So from here, they came here, conquered. They set up their capital at Cordoba and ushered in a golden age of Islam. And they even got all the way up. Do you see this red star-looking thing here? This is where Tours is. And it's known as the Battle of Tours. It's a famous battle because this is where the Muslims were trying to break into France and continue their expansion of their kingdom and religion. And Charles Martel, he actually was able to stop them right here, which was unprecedented at the time. Because wherever Islam went, it spread, and it spread fiercely. So Charles Martel holds them back here, and that stops the progression of Islam going throughout the rest of mainland Europe. And so, had this battle been lost by Charles Martel, our history would be very different in Europe compared to what we know today. And so, because of this battle, we have the Muslims who stay within the Iberian Peninsula, and this is the cutoff here. So, Europe will still remain Christian, and then Spain will remain Muslim until 1492 with the Spanish Inquisition. And then, and while we're here, during the medieval era, Muslims, Jews, and Christians lived in relative harmony and influenced each other's cultural achievements, very similar to like Baghdad. And they even had the largest library in the world at that time here in Al-Andalus or Spain. So go ahead and write your one-page summary, and I look forward to talking about this with you when we get back. Thanks. Bye-bye.